Hey, welcome back to Cutting Room Floor. Devin and I back together again to conversate about some of the stuff that we're not able to spend time looking at in the sermon series. And I did promise that we're going to slow down and look at this stuff, but also I did promise that we're going to speed up as far as the amount of talking I'm doing in a sermon. So we're going to try to do shorter sermons moving forward. I'm going to try to stay faithful to that promise, so that we're not here for 2 hours every single Sunday. But that causes an issue for us, which is why we need to do this cutting room floor stuff. If for those especially who are interested, we're going to be looking through some of the stuff that I'm having to skip over, or not spend as much time developing. And there's a lot in here. In fact, I think in the upcoming sermon, we're not going to be looking at the death of Sarah or Abraham. We're not looking really at much of Isaac's story at all. And really, I've kind of jumped across, how many chapters is it?
I think you're in like 27, 28.
So I've jumped 6 chapters, which when we're talking in Genesis, that's a significant portion of what's going on in the story. So anyway, we're hoping that you enjoyed this. Feel free to throw out any comments, any questions that you might have on the video. Feel free also to, approach one of us on a Sunday and ask any questions that you would have additional to the conversation, because we want to route our conversations along the things that you're asking about and the things that you're curious about as well. So with that, I guess we'll just hop right in and get going this time. So we just covered the death of, not the death of, sorry, the almost death of Isaac.
Yeah.
The sacrifice of Isaac. And then we moved on, like I said, to 28. So we've got 6 chapters in here to kind of look at. Now, like we did last week, I figure we just can start somewhere, or you can throw out some questions, and then we'll just get rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I kind of think that, where we left off last time we talked is there's this, in mine it's bracketed in verse 23 of the final chapter or the final paragraph of 22, makes reference to Bethuel, the father of Rebekah. And we talked a little bit about does the audience know who that is? Are they in expectation of who that person is and all that stuff? So that's where we left off. But, speeding up to 27, 28, it does mean that we also have to kind of skip an entire generation, which I don't want to do.
Right.
So, I think I had, I guess, lighter framed questions around chapter 23 has to do with Sarah's burial and where that happens. And the only reason why, I think apart from honoring Sarah and her life and involvement in God's promise and plan, is that the location of where she dies only really pings interest to me once we get to the end of Abraham's life.
Right.
Because he does take another wife towards the end of his life and have more children after that. Yep. But it says that when he dies, he's buried in the same place that Sarah is. And
what's interesting in the story, and I think there's maybe even later on some instances in which this particular place gets called out, and those will become significant later on. But what's significant in this story right now is that, again, we're seeing the character of someone who's walking with God. And what can happen as a result of God blessing Abraham to then bless the nations. And you can see that there's this back and forth they have in chapter 23. It's like, well, I want to buy a plot of land. And they're like, no, we're going to give it to you. And he's like, no, I'm going to buy it. Right. No, we're going to give it to you. And there's all this back and forth that makes you wonder, why is that going on? I think it's because they're either wanting to put Abraham in their debt. And I don't mean that in a negative sense necessarily.
Right.
Because again, that honor-shame dynamic, that's regular. But so it's not a negative thing that they want to put Abraham into their debt. They do want to gift him. But I think the fact that he wants to buy this land is an important indication that he has legal right, at least to a space or portion among the land of Canaan. And so that's significant. But also what's significant in the story is that this exile now has a space. So it's I know it's this little tiny thing.
Yeah.
But God is making good on the promise that Abraham will inhabit this land.
Do you think that maybe this is, at least within his lifetime, he's received the same promise over and over and over again, and this almost, I don't know, another way to put it, plants a flag in what will become the land that his descendants will inhabit.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And again, I think the relationship that they have with one another, the fact that they desire to honor Abraham and Sarah, is a point towards the fact that Abraham has been formed now to where he's not trying to deceive these guys. You know, I'm trying to bury my sister or whatever, you know, whatever
Right.
joke. It's clear that Abraham is no longer trying to deceive. He's trying to do the right thing.
Right.
So like the formation that God's been working across now 11 chapters since chapter 12 with him is now finally focusing in. It's happening.
Yeah.
And instead of taking a blessing that could be given to him, he instead wants to
He has a hand in it.
Exactly. That's a good way of putting it.
Because so far, I mean, even when he's done wrong,
Yes.
when they depart from the place, then they're like giving him stuff as he leaves and stuff, because and I guess at the end of all that, I think once we see kind of that formation of Abraham's character shift, then they say that line of surely God is with you in everything that you do.
Right.
So I guess I hadn't thought of that at all, that there is kind of a different dynamic of relationship between receiving a gift as a blessing, or this might be an instance, if not just an early instance, of Abraham having a hand in a not a covenant, but some sort of
he's partnering.
Yeah.
And this is an element of his partnership. He's responsible. He's taking on this responsibility as opposed to having the things just happen to him. Because that's what it's been so far, is that God has lavished blessings on him despite his disobedience.
Yeah.
And now he's being obedient and carving out a portion of the land that he's going to receive, or his descendants are going to receive. But now he's receiving. So he's seeing like a glimpse of, the garden, or the glimpse of God's promises coming true. So I think, these details, like, they are important because they do move the narrative along, but they're more than just narrative movers, right? They're setting the stage, as we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Which leads us then now into chapter 24, which is this whole scene. Is it a love story? Is it not a love story? I don't know, but it's a fun story with Isaac and Rebekah.
Yeah. And I kind of wanted to pick your brain about that, because I've heard interpretations of like what's the symbolism under all this and all that stuff. Do you have anything that you would speak into that, or do you think that's an overreading, or?
Yeah, I don't really know how much romance is going on here.
Yeah.
And I don't know how far I want to extend, the servant going to get the bride and all those things. Again, is this just descriptive of what's going on?
Yeah.
And a display of God's promises that, like, Isaac is going to have kids,
Sure, yeah. And I think that was my question for you, is like, I'm more familiar with the tradition that says that, like, oh, look at the parallels between this and, the servant and all that stuff.
And I think those are appropriate.
Right.
But again, it's like,
is that what the story hinges on, or is it just descriptive?
And I think there's a lot more of that going on in Genesis 22, right?
Okay.
Where there's clearly some like foreshadowing kind of stuff. And I think that you could derive some of that here, but I also think, this is a nice story in which, God's promises are being accomplished in a way that is not, certainly not conventional for us, but in a way that is miraculous in a sense, right? The servant prays, and here she comes. And, I think what we're supposed to be seeing more than anything is that God is arranging this.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure.
And now to the servant's identity later on, and how we can describe that to the New Testament and Rebekah, and
Right.
Okay.
There's probably a difference between something being descriptive, like you're saying, and still seeing the significance of God's hand in it, versus, I guess, would you call it like an inference of?
Yes, or like a hyperlink.
Yeah, yeah. Which, like you said, Genesis 22 does very tidily.
Yes.
This one, the parallels, I think, can be made.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to see where you sat on that.
And again, how can we know if this is the intent of Genesis chapter 22?
Right.
But I think the parallels that are in Genesis 22 are so much more apparent, and again, utilized by the New Testament. Whereas I don't know that we're really getting callbacks to Isaac and Rebekah's
Right.
love story,
Right.
or marriage story,
Right.
in the same way that we are things like Genesis 22.
Yeah.
And so I think when we're talking typology, like I think we do have to utilize the later texts to help understand. But again, the story as such, it is God working things out.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that that's maybe a wise way to, I mean, like last week, I kind of asked a question where it's like, I'm trying to make connections, and am I overreaching on this one, or is it wrong, or whatever?
Right.
Is that a good way to gauge, when you are trying to look for parallels within narratives and stuff like that? That up to this point, we've had several things that are like repeating lines and motifs
Right.
and stuff like that we can see through Genesis, the Old Testament, and then throughout the whole biblical narrative. To see something in isolation, could be valuable,
Yeah.
but is 24 not one that we see that same amount of repetition used throughout the rest of the story?
Yeah, and I think that would be, I think, because even the way you're framing the question has guardrails. You know what I mean? Like the way that you're even framing the question is, if this doesn't have,
Right.
you know what I'm trying to say,
Right.
X, Y, Z attached to it. And I think that's the thing, is those guardrails help us know if my interpretation is now becoming too allegorical,
Right.
or too eisegetical. I'm trying to input things from my culture, or what's the word I'm looking for? Anachronistic. I'm being anachronistic. I'm using something from my time or a later time,
Right.
and applying it back into the older time.
Yeah.
Using idioms like it would be anachronistic for me to say Abraham said that was the bomb, because that's
Right.
not something, he doesn't even know what a bomb is.
Right.
That would be an anachronism. So I think once you set up the guardrails, which would be things like, how often does this theme get repeated? Does the New Testament pick this up? Does the prophetic witness later on in the Old Testament draw on these themes? And I think that would be the next place to start looking for, is, does the particular language of a servant going and seeking out a wife for his master, does that particular theme get expressly displayed?
Right.
Or does it get express kind of revelation from God to, his prophets or someone in the New Testament? I think those are the kind of things we're looking for.
Right. Would inference be the way to, would that be the word for it, or?
Yeah, I think you could draw an inference that maybe later on maybe this theme is drawing on that, or what have you. But I think we are looking for instance, Moriah. We're looking for particular words. Even
Right.
we're looking for, so when we even when we're doing for Exile, because we are trying to do the same kind of thing here, draw a theme out. We're looking not only for the word necessarily, but for the concept.
Right.
It doesn't say in Genesis 3 that they were exiled. It says that they were banished,
Right.
sent out. Well, that's the same concept,
Right.
even if it's not the same word. And so we can draw that theme a little more differently, because we have so much data that is utilizing the garden imagery, the mountain imagery. You get it.
Yeah.
You get it. But, for our people, it is important. We don't want to read a story in the Old Testament and then immediately try and make associations in the New Testament, unless we have done our work, our due diligence, are familiar enough with the text to know that, or to have our mind start pinging, oh, is this a thing? And then after that, I need to not force it in.
Right.
I need to not force my definition or my observation into a thing. That's when tradition becomes really helpful too. That's another one of the guidelines.
Right. Yeah, and I think that happens pretty easily too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and not even in a negative sense,
No,
but it's
no.
like, there is some value to parallels that are within that chapter.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm just saying that. Yeah. I mean, you said it better.
Well, I don't know.
That we just don't say. We just don't treat it with the same sort of concrete, this is what this
Yes.
type of language means
Yes.
every time consistently through the narrative. But I'm saying, even if there is value and stuff and all that, what it does do, and I don't think unintentionally or anything like that, but for someone like me, I grew up in the church, I'm familiar with the story and all that stuff. When I read this chapter, I go into it reading it through the lens of, well, this is what these parallels mean, rather than or initially, that's where my tendency
I
tends to
understand.
go.
I understand.
You know, I go into the text looking for, with a particular set of lenses on,
Yeah.
which might not be bad in and of themselves,
No.
but I also want to do my due diligence to have put myself in the position of the narrative up to this point
Yeah.
to see what it's saying within the context of what it is, and then to the people of the day, and then to my
There it
position.
goes. And
So I'm kind of skipping the first two steps.
But you're
And
taking
the third one might be good,
but you're taking them for granted, though. I think that's a part of
Totally.
it, and I
Yeah.
think it is good to expressly state that those are the first two things that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Is be we're trying to be good exegetes.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to pull out from the text what it's initially saying within its own framework.
Yeah.
And then we can start drawing the parallels if they do in fact exist.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they don't.
Yeah. I'm talking about value, but in the right
Yes.
order.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that descending hierarchy, or however you want to say that, is a really important way of looking at what these guidelines are.
Yeah.
And I think those guidelines help us read with curiosity, and they're helping us look for things. But I think, again, you know, a part of it is not just my own personal reading time and my own personal inferences that I think I'm seeing or whatever. It then becomes incumbent upon me to take the next step, which would be to say, does this passage or does this word or does this concept or, you know, does this story, does it, has someone else seen this? Has someone else in church history seen this? And then have other people looked at that and thought, I agree with this.
Right.
There is something valuable about
Yeah.
utilizing our tradition.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's not totally bad that you were told maybe there was a parallel in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now you get to test if that truly is the thing or not.
And I think testing it by not just working my way backwards
Yes.
from my position and what I've been taught, but
Right.
it will prove itself to be true if I can work my way forward.
Period.
You know?
Period. Because the chapter is the chapter
Yeah.
by itself.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, within the literary context and all the things,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it. In other words, I can't force a meaning simply because I'm trying to draw allegories to Jesus at every moment or to my life, maybe. 'Cause,
Right.
You know, not that there's anything bad with drawing, because we do believe that the text is all pointing towards Jesus. The Old Testament's pointing forward to Jesus. The New Testament's pointing back to him. We do believe that. But that doesn't mean that every detail or every word has a direct linkage the way that something like Genesis 22 does,
Right.
or, you know, a prophecy from Isaiah, you know, born of a virgin
Yeah.
in the town of Bethlehem. Like,
Yeah.
not every other word is going to have that direct linkage. Is that helpful? I'm
I'm on
under it.
board.
And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really good. No,
No.
well, I'm saying you know, it's a moment to like ask you guys, is that kind of explanation helpful? Because the way we read, it's called a hermeneutic.
Yeah.
It's the lensing that I apply to the text. It's really, really important.
Yeah.
Because there's all kinds of lenses that I can, you know, start applying to my sight as I read the text. And like you said, if I have that out of priority, or if my priority list is out of whack with, like, again, the way our tradition has laid out these guidelines, and by our tradition I mean the church by and large, but like the church has helped us over time know how to appropriately do textual interpretation,
Yeah.
and then how to figure out how that applies in my day and in my way.
Yeah.
And so it is valuable to know the what, not just have like an intuitive sense of, well, you know, okay, I'm reading this, now I'm just going to open my Bible.
Right.
And I'm going to hope that attaches because this is a spiritual book.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, but it also works within the rules of literature.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think the importance of, like, you know, having a good hermeneutic setup
Yeah.
is, we've talked about things like this before. It's like, okay, yeah, we could teach something and teach it really well. And is it something that, you know, everyone just gets to put in their back pocket and have with them?
Right.
Where it's like, okay, for me, and that's not bad,
Nope.
but for me, that's chapter 24 is, okay, I have a particular lens that I'm reading it through and, you know, parallels that I can draw. But not to any fault of whoever taught me that or whatever.
Yeah.
But do I have the reasoning for how I even got there?
There it is.
You know, is it just a little nugget of something interesting in the Bible that is valuable, or am I becoming a Bible student who can arrive at this conclusion? It's the show your work problem.
Yes.
And that's the other thing I wanted to say is that, you know, if we talk about if our study or our, steps that we go through being out of order, not in value or
Correct.
priority as far as, what's the importance of the text. I mean,
Yes.
doing the steps in the proper order to arrive
Yes.
at the sum,
Yeah.
and this is good because I guess my question framed around this whole one was light as far as like, what do you think of those parallels? But what has really helped me do, I didn't have that preloaded as how I'm going to present this question, but it's really helped me examine, well, how do I arrive at,
Yeah.
okay, I see what this text is trying to say to me and
Yeah.
them then, I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. And I was just thinking as you were talking too, like having an inferential parallel that maybe in my brain goes, oh, I've never noticed that detail before. That makes me think of Jesus. Okay, that's wonderful, but is it something we should hang a doctrine upon?
Yeah.
Because there's another
Yeah.
one of those elements of the guidelines. It's like Genesis 22, we can hang doctrine on. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
trying?
No,
We've got
100%.
lamb, we've got son, the only son being sacrificed. We've got these really, really important ideas that are being preloaded for us as we head towards the New Testament. Whereas maybe something, about the romance of Isaac and Rebekah, of course it'll point to Jesus in some way or to some other story.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Yeah. Well, let me ask it this way. What's that famous sermon where the guy explains the David and Goliath story?
Yeah.
You are not David.
That's right.
So I think maybe that's another way to do it is like, of course you could, and we have, not
Yes.
us personally, but, the church has done the, this is you're facing your giants moment
Right,
or whatever.
right.
Is there value in that? Sure.
Sure
Is
there is.
God going to help you overcome stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. Is that what this is trying to say?
Correct. There's the distinction.
No. Yeah. So, and I think that's important. Like you said, of course it's going to point to Jesus and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It probably is.
Yeah, mostly. I mean, there's a way, even the negative stuff.
But I guess what I'm saying
know?
is, how do you, how are, with your cast of characters, who's in the narrative, who you're relating to and who you, I guess I don't really know how to say it. Outside of that, like David and Goliath analogy,
Yeah.
that's probably the best way to say it. I don't want to misdiagnose who is carrying out the character of God in the story. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
If I miss that, then I'll miss what it's actually trying to say to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's an appropriate way to look at it. For instance, in the David and Goliath story, like it would be a good thing to emulate David. In the ways that he was bold and courageous, and he stood up to challenge the challenger Goliath, and he prays, and he does all the things right. He prepares, he knows his worth, his value. He knows based upon the evidence of past instances, I fought the lion, I fought the bear, I know that God will be with me. Okay, like those are good things to emulate, but that doesn't mean that now the point, like you said, I love the way you said it, that the point of the story is about me overcoming my Goliaths.
Well, and to play off of what you just said, those are good things to emulate. Why? Because David is a man of good character, or because he is the one who is holding God's character.
There you
this.
go.
So
There you go. And I think that there's the distinction. There's that subtle shift where I'm stopping myself from. It's not bad for me to enter the story in the sense of what would it have felt like to be David, to be Saul, to be the Israelites. What must Goliath have been feeling or thinking? Like, that's fine. But again, the point of that story is not those feelings, or some kind of spiritualized lesson that comes out of that is an easily applied thing to my day. Because the danger of that kind of reading is that I might actually be reading the story wrong.
Right. Yeah. And miss the character of God.
Which is the whole point, right? And we've said it in the sermon series, right? The Bible's not about you. It's actually about God. And so how is David pointing us to God? How is his battle with Goliath pointing us to God? How is Goliath pointing us to God? Yeah, in the negative sense. He's how we should not be. We should not emulate his character. So we can do that. But again, it all has to point to where the story is headed, if that makes sense.
Maybe that's an important distinction too, is like super clear the Bible's not about you,
Yeah.
but the theme that we've, not the main theme, but something we've hit on over the last 2 weeks is the importance of like, well, what is God accomplishing in someone like Abraham? It is formation.
Yes.
So it's not about you,
Yes.
but it is about forming Abraham or
Yeah,
David or
absolutely.
you and I into the character of God.
That's
you know,
right.
so even though not about us, we are
Yeah.
used in this partnership relationship in a way to
God loves us.
yeah. I'm saying too much for you to say that.
No, but it's good the way you're framing that. It's really, really important because these parameters, they help us read the story looking for God, not looking for myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing.
Ooh, and if the Bible is about you, that would be such a disappointing story.
Oh man. Yeah, in so many ways.
Yeah.
And again, I could read a story about Isaac and Rebekah, and I could draw out all kinds of meanings. Well, if I'm a single person, then what I ought to do is find a servant.
Yeah.
And I could say, well, it's not a servant in my day. It's just one of my best friends.
Or is what it's saying that if you were looking for a spouse or whatever,
Right.
is the way to do it is to go to God and ask for a sign,
Right.
Is that what it's telling us to do?
Yeah. No. And is that wrong? No. Sure, we can ask God for things that. This is the way I like to say it. Maybe I'm not asking for a fleece to be wet, or
Right.
or like in this instance, the particular divine arrangement in the particular way it happens.
Right.
Rebecca comes up and asks about the watering and all that kind of stuff. Now, is it inappropriate to ask for a sign? No, it's not. But the way that I would phrase that would be, God, show me what you want me to see in a way that I'll perceive it.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for
Right.
that. We have all kinds of stuff, but maybe that is a good thing to pull out of the story because that's transcultural. That goes beyond a particular specific culture. But when I start looking at stuff and I go, okay, well, I don't have servants in my day, so I'm going to ask my best friend to go look for me a spouse, and my best friend, and I'm going to pray for that best friend to go and.
That better be a good friend.
It's like what are we talking about
Yeah.
at that point? Like that doesn't map on the culture. It doesn't map
Yeah.
on the actual intended meaning of the story, which is that God is arranging these things for His purposes and His plans, not for my blessing or benefit primarily.
Right.
Although that will happen too. So the point of the story is not how you find a spouse. The point of the story is that God arranges
Right. Yeah.
all His plans and His will for His purposes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way of reading. And not to say that the parallels that maybe a pastor that you've encountered in your time are necessarily along that kind of reading.
Right.
So I don't mean to lump those together, but I do mean to say that there's a hazy area of reading that's looking again for myself rather than
Right.
for Jesus. And even the reading that's looking for Jesus can overemphasize
Right.
these connections or parallels. Not that they don't exist, not that they're hurting us or harming us, but again, what is the point the text is trying to draw?
Yeah. We have to arrive there through the proper channels.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's a long way of saying just follow the rules.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. What are the rules?
We should do that one time. We should
Yeah.
we should pull up what are the hermeneutic guidelines.
Well, I would love to.
That'd be cool. Maybe we could do that next time. I've got several books that we could look at. And anyway, there's several that are very, very good that help us, especially because this is an Eastern document. It's not a Western document, It's not written the way I
Yeah.
It's written well. Don't mishear it. But I identify with Paul a lot more because it's like a newspaper article.
Right.
Yeah. It's like an op-ed.
He talks somehow closer to how we talk.
Yes.
But
Which of course we draw from the same kind of cultural background, the Greek and Roman
Yeah.
cultural background. Whereas this is kind of removed from us, and now it's good story, and we know good story, but the way that we derive meaning and truth out of these texts, we got to understand this is not like our. It's not Aesop's Fables. It's
Right.
It's not an episode of SpongeBob, which I don't know if SpongeBob has ever given a moral lesson, but anyway, it's not an episode of some cartoon show.
Yeah.
That's showing us easily and simply the meaning of a story, and we could tie it up nicely with a bow at the end, because we've got all kind of stories that are coming up in here that are not good.
Yeah. Coming up quick.
Coming up really quick. And so I guess all I'm trying to say is that we need to familiarize ourselves not only with the text itself, but also with the culture that's kind of embedded in here. And the more that we study that and do that, it's not like it's going to drastically change the meaning of the text necessarily.
Right.
But I think it deepens our understanding.
Yeah, it colors it in for sure, and helps to draw you away from your culture and context, and put you in the actual scene,
which is important.
Yeah. Well, that was good.
Yeah, and chapter 24 is real. It is a good story, man.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it is a good story. So, but there, you can see why I skipped over it. It's not really impacting our theme of exile per se.
Right, and it doesn't. Super value. Does it progress the exile narrative?
I mean, in a sense, yes, because he's getting his wife, and they're going to have kids.
Not largely.
But not largely. Well, next we have the death of Abraham, which is an important moment.
I actually have another question.
Actually,
okay. It might not mention this till chapter 25, actually.
Okay.
But I guess while we're talking about Isaac and Rebekah and all that stuff, takes them a long time to have kids too.
Yes.
Same as Abraham and Sarah.
Yep.
And as I was flipping through, I think it might actually be in 25, that it talked about, I think it's a 20-year period between when Isaac and Rebekah are married before they actually have Jacob and Esau.
I'm trying to remember the detail. I'm not positive on the time frame. That could be interesting, because again, we keep saying this. You go from one chapter to the next,
and a lot of time has passed, and that's kind of my point. That between another page, we skipped a chapter, and we're talking a whole generation. Even within that generation, there's a long waiting period of. We talked about it last week. Abraham has received the promise of his descendants inheriting a land and being a blessing to all nations 3 times before the son is even born.
Yeah.
And then he's born, and then after the sacrifice, it's reiterated again.
That's right.
And then the promise gets told to Isaac. He doesn't just inherit it because his parents told him about it.
Yes.
It says that the Lord appeared before him, and I believe that is in 25.
Yeah.
And which is another appearance moment.
Yes, another appearance moment. Because Sarah is, well, okay, so Isaac's 40 years old at this point when he married Rebekah, okay? And that's when he's beginning to pray on behalf of Rebekah, or at least that seems to be the time frame. So some years have passed, whether it's 3 or 15 or 20, whatever, we know that they know they're barren, that they're not able to have kids.
Yeah.
Whatever that time frame has been from this page to that page, we know that there is an issue, because the promise is that through Abraham's descendants, we're going to inherit this land, and we're going to be blessed and be a blessing to all the nations. Well, how can that happen if Rebekah can't have children?
Right.
We're back to this same thing.
And I think that's interesting too, that there's still this period of time of a lot of tension and expectation Isaac would have, I would assume, have understood his own position as like, hey, this is a long-awaited thing. We did the Mount Moriah bit last week and all that. If it's about descendants, does he marry Rebekah and expect that, let's, get this next generation rolling? And if it doesn't come, would he even start to second-guess his own position? You know? Even within these next chapters, it gives kind of the lineage of Isaac as well as the lineage of Ishmael.
Yes.
And so, I don't know if there's any contact or overlap or anything like that. It could be. Yeah. I'm as I was reading it, I'm wondering what it would be like to be, and I have a lot of sympathy for people who are waiting to have kids, and it can take a long time or all that stuff.
It's not easy.
I'm kind of trying to get into the headspace of what it would be like to expect to, hey, not only from his parents, but from the Lord again, that there will be descendants, and then to wait and wait and wait and wait. Yeah. I just think that's an interesting thing that tension goes into this next generation as well.
Yeah. And you know, it's what's required of Isaac and Rebekah is faith. Mm-hmm. You know, Lord, what's going on here? You know, you've made these promises. We're aware of them. You know, why has this not happened for us? And you know, unfortunately, we don't have we're not living the Bible in that sense, where we're having these moments where, you know, God is physically appearing or appearing in a vision or a dream or something like that, answering us from heaven or things like that. And maybe we can, you know, have communication through the Spirit or a prompting or an urging or maybe sometimes words, but that's not the normative experience. And it's also not the normative experience for even these guys. Because again, Abraham walked with God for, you know, 50, 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
And we only know of the instances that we read about, but there, you can count them on one hand.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it's all the time.
Right.
That, you know, God is walking with Abraham literally in a physical sense. It's that he has significant moments that move along his story. And so here we're seeing that with Isaac, where Rebekah, you know, unable to become pregnant. We're seeing, kind of a replaying of Abraham's story. Will Isaac be faithful?
Yeah.
You know, this is like a test here. Will Isaac be faithful?
Yeah.
Will Rebekah be faithful?
Yeah.
And, you know, thankfully God arrives. He makes good on his promise. He says, you're going to have these kids. And then the next thing we hear is that they become pregnant, which is like a really cool moment in the story.
I do have another question before we get to pregnant with Esau and Jacob, is that when it talks about Abraham and Sarah, it says that Isaac is born when Abraham is like 100 years old.
Yeah.
He's as good as dead. And then we finish that chapter, or 23.
Yeah.
23, Sarah dies. And we do the whole burial thing. Beginning of 25.
Yeah, he's having kids.
Abraham takes another wife.
Yeah.
And has kids. So I guess less just kind of being in awe of how old he is and still having more kids, but kind of with what I was saying before, is there this tension in Isaac as far as the generations are going to come through this son? Well, he has a brother who has generations that are described right after and right before Abraham is also having other children.
Yeah.
So I wonder if I wonder what it's like inside Isaac's head as far as, you know, he's heard. Has he heard from the Lord in 25 up to that point? When does he get the promise from God personally?
Yeah, I believe it's later on here. 26, 24. That night the Lord appeared to him and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and will increase your number and your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. And then Isaac goes on to build an altar there and call on the name of the Lord. So it's actually after the situation here.
Okay.
In chapter 25, where they are barren and unable to have children.
Okay.
So that's the promise is not reiterated until after Isaac swindles Abimelech.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. That was my next questions around Abimelech. Do you want to sit on anything else first?
Yeah. Let's look back at this. It is funny that Abraham is as good as dad, and he goes on the and then
he's having a lot of kids.
He has even more kids.
Yeah.
Than he had with Sarah. Yeah, I you know, who's to say? Who's to say what's going on with
Doesn't it say he lives to be 167 or something like that?
Yes.
175.
175.
So even, I mean, it's 75 years of
afterwards, right? Even that there's time where, and then after Sarah's death, which would be, so he's got 50 years between Sarah's death and his death, where he's still having children.
Yeah.
So, you know, is as the Bible describing it? I think it's something more akin to. They're unable to. He is an old man.
Yeah.
She particularly can't.
Yes.
Because
she's
past the time. She's well past the time for her body to be able to. Right. It appears that Abraham is not past his body being able to have children. It's just that their marriage is unable to, and he is an old dude. I mean, that is the case.
Yeah, I think that's kind of in line with what you were saying earlier about like, hey, what is the I mean, and that's not even culturally specific. We do things like that all the
Right.
time. As far as like, what do we mean when we say
Right.
this? You know, if I was
Yeah.
going to take it as well, he was as good as dead. Like, he was as good as dead for 75 years. Like, what's it like to be on death's door for 75 years? The point being,
He's old.
they're old.
That's the idea
Yeah.
contained. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. And he does go on to have children, which again, he was promised. You're going to be the father of nations.
Many.
That's right.
Okay.
Not just a nation, but many nations.
Yes.
And I think we're seeing that fulfillment occur here. So, are those things contradictory? Not necessarily.
But that was one of the particulars that I hadn't picked up on before until reading through this last week, is that like the father of many nations, I would have assumed of like, okay, I know where the story's going through Isaac and Jacob and all that
right.
stuff in the nation of Israel. And then, well, these other nations must come from Ishmael
Right.
and his descendants. So
Right.
I kind of pictured it as a like, there's a fork in the road that happens. God's good on his promise through this end and on this end as well, and that we just keep branching out from there. But it's even more diverse than that off of Abraham.
And what'll be fascinating is as we go along in the story. So, for instance, okay, we've got one of the sons in 25:4. I'll back up to the beginning. Abraham had taken another wife whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimram, Jokshan, Midian,
Yeah.
Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan was the father of Sheba, and Dedan, and on it goes. Midian's an interesting.
Yeah.
Is going to be an interesting location
Yes.
and nation at some point in the story, because we have priests coming from them. So
Who are very allegiant to the same God as it, which, yeah.
we have Jethro, priest
Yeah.
of Midian, who shows up with Moses,
Yeah.
and becomes Moses' father-in-law. So, like here, I think, because again, these texts aren't being recorded as a history book,
Right.
in the way that we would think of. A reporter walking around writing the details down.
Right.
They said this, they said that. I've got a recorder going back and forth. These are in light of and alongside. We have the oral stories, but we also have now, because you have consistent moments, right, where things are like said, and Abraham dug a well, and it's still there to this day.
Right.
So like clearly the author is a later on author.
Yeah.
And that doesn't need to scare us. We have God's word as He wants us to have it. There's nothing scary or strange happening there, but we are seeing in light of later history. We're able to see the significance of these events in a greater perspective, and so I think those details really become important for the writers to put down.
Yeah.
Because you can see who are going to be faithful to the God of Abraham. And just because you're not a chosen person doesn't mean you can't be. Just because you're not Isaac,
Right.
doesn't mean you can't be
Right.
a faithful follower of God.
Well, that's an interesting thought too, because are there examples of both where it's like, okay, we could look at Midian, and be like, okay, wait, we can kind of do a lineage of thought and faith that takes us all the way back to Abraham. That these people might at least this priest of Midian still held on to till they're kicking around with Moses and all that stuff. That's I think fun and good and all that stuff. But aren't there also examples of people who, in let's say isolation, would still choose to be faithful to the God of Israel, even if they are from another nation that wouldn't necessarily arrive at the same allegiance?
Naaman is one later on in the story. Well, we don't even have to go forward in the story. Naaman is one who receives healing later on in the story. I'm trying to remember what nationality he is. I am not positive off the top of my head. I think he might be Assyrian. I can't remember. It's along the time of it's Elijah or Elisha.
Who can tell?
I get this too confused. I think it might be Elijah.
Okay.
And Naaman goes and washes in the Jordan, and he receives healing. He wants to take even a part of the land with him. He's not a dude that's like, you know what I mean? It's not as though he grew up and had this formational, contact with Yahweh.
Woman in the wall of Jericho. What's her name?
Absolutely, Rahab. She's only
yeah.
hearing the stories about what's going on down there in Egypt.
Yeah.
She's not had contact with the specific God Yahweh.
Right.
But she knows she's heard the evidence. She's heard the witness. Now, what's interesting is we've got this dude back here in Genesis 14. Yes, Genesis 14, we have this king priest, king of Salem,
Yeah.
and his name is Melchizedek.
Yeah.
And he is presumably a king and priest of God Most High, is what it says in Genesis 14, 18. Abraham returned from defeating these other kings that were allied against, these other kings in this valley. They take Lot. That's why Abraham gets enmeshed in this battle thing that's going on. He goes and rescues Lot. And on his way from rescuing Lot and defeating these other kings, he encounters Melchizedek, king of Salem. And this king of Salem brings out bread and wine. He was a priest priest of God Most High. And he blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Then Abram fought him because he's one of these bad kings and you're not serving the right God? No, of course not. It says, then Abram gave him a tenth of everything.
Yeah.
So there's something interesting.
We have to do a whole talk around that because we can't do it right now.
No, there's too much going on in the story. But just as an indication that there are other isolated, however you want to say that, isolated people who maybe aren't rubbing shoulders with God's chosen people,
right,
who do somehow know Yahweh.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Melchizedek in particular, because what I was saying is like, okay, off of these splits, can you trace a lineage of faith or whatever back to Abraham is one thing, but then you'd also have people in isolation. Melchizedek is an example of one who is before any of that stuff. So
and is showing Abram something.
Yeah.
It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's something really interesting going on there. And yes, we're going to have to talk more about, we're going to talk about Melchizedek.
On the calendar one day.
We're going to talk about Melchizedek. Maybe as we wrap up Genesis, that would be the right time to go back and talk in detail about Melchizedek, because he becomes an important character, especially for the apostles in the New Testament, in the linkages with Jesus. And anyway, he is an important character, and we'll look at him. But in answer to your question, yes, I think there are standout cases. Because again, God is not only committed to his chosen people. The chosen is not about being the only people of God.
Right.
It's about being...
And that's not even their purpose. It's for the nations anyway.
You got it.
Yeah, so anytime that we see them linking up with or doing right by or having right done by them, just by recognition of that God is on their side, even when they're in the wrong, then it's like, okay, we're getting a little snapshot or a amuse-bouche of what God is trying to do.
Well, and that's what these stories are actually. I love that you said it that way, because as we go from Genesis here, we're going to start running into all these vignette stories, okay, where like there's this main through thread, and it's going to become harder and harder for us to maintain the through thread of the story, okay? The main topic of the story, which is how God is going to do this Genesis 3:15 thing, right? How he's going to bring about this snake crusher, how he's going to deal with exile, how he's going to deal with, how he's going to bring this promised child through Abraham's family, how he's going to make them into a nation, and then how eventually, as we read, how the Messiah is going to come about. Who is that Genesis 3:15 snake crusher? And that gets all attached later on in the story. But it's going to be harder for us to chart Abraham's the story that God is telling through Abraham's family to bring about that Messiah, because we're going to get all these vignettes. We're going to get all these stories about this happening over here and that happening over there, and this prophet saying this, and it's going to be harder and harder for us to stay clear on what the story actually is, because there's just so much material to study and to look at and to think through. Yeah. And there's so many other themes that are being, drawn out along the story. And so it is important for us to keep in mind that this particular thing is the main thing that God is trying to see happen. But just because you're chosen doesn't mean that there aren't other potentials, other people who can come into. And in fact, even the law discusses this. The law is not just for the chosen people. The law is also for those who come in, who are foreigners or strangers, those who come in to the nation of Israel, right? Which we'll look at later on. But again, we're already starting to see that those concepts be preloaded here in the narrative. There will be people who can encounter Yahweh. There will be people who will be faithful to God Most High, as Melchizedek says, who aren't necessarily of Abraham's chosen line.
Right. And maybe that's an important thing to keep in frame too, is like chosen for what? For
Yes.
favor, or chosen to accomplish this snake
task,
crusher?
this particular story that, again, it's gonna be hard to see that story
Yeah.
as we go. We got to keep our minds maintained on that. But yeah, and again, that concept that there's more going on with God than just because, again, I want to say it this way: chosen doesn't mean only.
Right.
Chosen means unique.
Yeah. Do you think it gets harder to keep an eye on the narrative progress simply because, like, well, up to this point we're following one guy?
Yeah.
You know, and then okay, now we're following a family line, then we're going to follow a nation, then we're going to follow many nations and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The target has remained the same. There's
Yes.
just many more people aiming
Yes.
at it, I guess, and
Yes.
who's hitting the mark and who's not.
And because God is not only giving us the answer at the end of the equation, like there's other concepts, ideas, and things he's dealing with in the midst of the story. You know what I mean? Like he's dealing with people. Like, the prophets aren't only supposed to come and tell about the Messiah. They are supposed to do that, but they're also supposed to tell the nation current, return to the Lord.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so there's this constant, like, twofold thing going on throughout the whole text, where, like, there's this main through thread, but people in the story right now are important, and we can't lose that they're a part of the through thread. They're a part of what God is doing. You know, ultimately, maybe the ultimate meta narrative of Scripture, but there are people in the story that are attached to this meta narrative.
Yeah.
And we have to deal with them too, because God loves them as well.
Yeah.
And so God's somehow able to do that calculus where,
Yeah, right.
like, he's able to keep the meta narrative in mind, moving the story forward that way, but also dealing with the people at the moment.
Yeah.
Because, again, the main story is the thing he's wanting to accomplish, which is the journey and walk with God.
Yeah. Yeah. What an amazing, like, thing to ponder, and what a blessing also that God can orchestrate, hold all things together, but then he's also intensely personal.
Yes. And so, again, we keep belaboring this, but I think that's a part of what we're trying to see here, is that, like, God is making good on his promises with these people. Ishmael is blessed. Ishmael does have a family.
Yeah.
Abraham is blessed. He does make nations. But notice how we have kind of a genealogy situation again, just like we did in Genesis chapter 10. Then, boom, it shifts right back to the chosen son again.
Right.
Because I think there's that kind of back and forth point that the text is trying to make, that we are trying to draw it in to the unique son.
That is an interesting point too, that, like, hey, we got a list of these two other contemporary genealogies.
Yeah.
Not just that they're interesting, but also important, that, like, God also made a promise to Ishmael and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and he did it. And it's like, well, many nations for Abraham, he did it.
He did it.
And then, like you said, back to main narrative.
That's right.
Or not main narrative, but those things have been accomplished.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think it's not inappropriate to say main narrative, because, again, because God is charting. It's not through Ishmael's son that the Messiah. It's not through Ishmael's line that the Messiah will come.
I guess the reason why I said that is, like, well, if you were outside of Isaac's line, would you look at yourself, even if you were one of those people who was faithful to Yahweh?
Yeah.
You say, well, am I not part of the main narrative? Like, well, it's not about any of us, but yes, you are a part of. Anyways.
And I think but again, that is the right distinction.
Yeah.
And it's not as though the side stories or the vignettes are distracting us or making us lose something. That's the whole point.
Right.
That's the beauty of what God is doing through the story, is that it isn't just about this unique family.
Right.
It's actually that it's supposed to be about a lot more.
Right.
And when this unique family gets it wrong,
Yeah.
is when they too inwardly focus on themselves.
Yeah.
And to the exclusion of the other people that could be blessed by God, could become covenant partners along with the nation of Israel, serving Yahweh, but they keep making it about them, and not about the story that God is telling, the redemption that God is bringing about. So I don't think it's wrong to say main story, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think it kind of is the main story is that this Messiah is coming.
I was just trying to be sensitive.
No, I appreciate the sensitivity.
Well, and I guess once we get New Testament, then it's the most useful analogy for it is the whole grafting in thing.
That's right.
Is it? I guess
That's right.
that is the way to say it. Is there is a main vine?
Yes.
And it's
Yes. And it's not that the other stuff isn't important,
right.
but it's that God's making a way for all stories to find their telos, their completion, their purpose
Right.
in this main route, you know?
Yeah.
Which again is garden language and
Right. Right.
all this stuff's going to map on eventually. Okay, so
I want to talk about Abimelech.
okay, let's talk about Abimelech.
I know as the chapter continues, then we start talking about the birth of Esau and Jacob. But if we jump ahead to 26,
Yeah, can I just read the first line?
yeah,
Now there was a famine in the land. Okay, and then he has a little dash. Besides the previous famine in Abraham's time, it's like the author's almost like winking, like
Yeah.
this is a different story, y'all.
yeah.
Anyway,
Which I think is important because who's in the story, and what is everyone doing?
it's like
Like we've done
this. It's a very similar
exactly
thing.
this more than once already.
Why don't we give like a little a summary of what happens? Okay, famine. Not Abraham's famine.
Before,
Isaac goes to Abimelech.
who's in Egypt, right?
No, sorry,
No.
Philistine.
Oh no. It's a sorry.
King of the
I jumped
Philistines
ahead.
in Gerar.
Okay,
No,
got
yeah,
it.
you jumped ahead. But
Yeah.
yes, that so and then they're talking with one another. Hold on, let's see here. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in the land for a while, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to your descendants I will give all the lands and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham." So it's actually twice in this chapter
Yeah.
that God appears and gives him the same promise, the reiteration. Because Abraham obeyed me and did everything I required of him, keeping my commandments, my decrees, and my instructions. So Isaac stayed there in Gerar. And then what happens?
So the reason why I wanted to mention Egypt is
Yeah.
because of what it says in verse 6. So Isaac settled in Gerar. Verse 7, when the men of that place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." For he feared to say, "My wife," thinking lest these men of the place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance.
Yeah.
Now,
Just take Isaac and Rebekah's name out. Put Abraham and Sarah's in.
so Abraham did it twice.
Twice.
And where did he do it?
In Egypt and here in Gerar.
So what I'm wondering about, the Lord appeared to him in verse 2, the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down into Egypt."
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, in Isaac's mind,
Yeah.
he's just like, "Oh, there's a famine, we'll go to Egypt."
Right.
And if this is what he says when he's in Gerar, is he also
Yeah,
like,
what was
when we
he
get to
gonna say in
Egypt, I'm going to run the same...
The same scheme.
Yeah, which we've talked about before outside, is...
So maybe
you go for it.
Maybe we should do this on camera now because
Okay.
I think this is interesting. You brought up to me. Do you think that you asked me? Do you think this is Abraham's like con game that he's playing?
I'm almost implied to think that it's a con. So I think there's the definite, fear for his life.
Sure.
Like they'll kill me and take her.
Right.
But that he does it more than once.
Yes.
Is he trying to, is it like a dowry exchange kind of thing? If I can enter this land as a foreigner,
Yeah.
not only to preserve my own life, but what can I get out of this?
Right.
And the way that he even presents it to his wife is, if you love me, you will do this for me.
Yeah. And why would he say that if he's simply scared?
Yeah, which definitely turns the dial to even worse.
Yes,
Not that
yes.
any of it was okay, but
Right.
That if his motivation is also gain,
Yeah.
not even just fear for his own life, and that it also happens,
Yeah.
and that that kind of also would maybe give us a more reasonable explanation for like when he leaves Egypt or Abimelech, and they give him all this stuff.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Because he's conned them.
Yeah, he's tricked them, and then also it might just be like, hey, we want to wash our hands of this.
Yeah.
We gave you all this stuff so that we could have your sister or whatever and marry into lines or whatever.
Yeah.
Just take it.
Yeah.
Keep it, just go.
Yeah,
is
we
kind
don't-
of where I think they would arrive.
We don't
if
want
it
you
was a
coming
con.
back and having any legal claim against us at all.
Yeah.
Which I think is what Abraham knows is going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's
yeah.
I think it's a scheme, which I'd never thought of.
And I've never thought of until you brought it up. I love that idea. So is it possible that Isaac is replaying the same scheme?
I think that maybe that the Lord appears to him and says, "Do not go down into Egypt." Maybe the Lord is also anticipating, like, "Hey,
Yeah.
if you're thinking of running this same
We're not
deal
doing
as before,
Right.
don't do it."
Right.
But then, even when he gets to, how do you say it, Gerar?
Gerar.
He does it anyway.
He does it anyway.
But what happens is pretty interesting, and who participates and who gets wind of what's going on is very interesting to me. Should we just keep reading this,
Yeah,
John?
why not?
So verse 8, when he had been there a long time, Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, looked out a window and saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah, his wife. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Behold, she is your wife." "How then could you say she is my sister?" Isaac said to him, "Because I thought, lest I die because of her."
Yeah.
Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of my people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, "Whoever touches this man and his wife shall surely be put to death." So it doesn't say, like earlier,
Yeah.
Abimelech is the one who sees Sarai and wants to bring
Yes.
her in and all that
Yes.
stuff. And, if we're following, ages and all this stuff, Abimelech is also surely an old man by this time. But that he sees Isaac and his conduct with Rebekah and recognizes, like, hey, this is not brother and sister, this is a couple. And he's like, I've seen, if it is a scheme by Abraham, he's like, I've seen this racket run before.
Yeah, you can't.
And we're not doing it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the order that he gives, right?
And that he's the one who recognized it, I think is...
Which makes you wonder, is number one, Abimelech has been, he's been wizened up to the situation.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one thing. But then maybe is the other thing that God is trying to, stop this nonsense from occurring again.
Yeah. Well, and Abimelech is also the one who says, like, surely God is with you in everything that you do.
Yeah.
To Abraham.
Yes.
After all that other stuff unfolds.
Yeah.
So I almost wonder if, is this preemptively, through the Lord via Abimelech.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this isn't going to run here. Nobody touch her.
Yeah.
Or him, it's not happening again. So it almost makes it sound like there's an attempt on Isaac's part to portray her as his sister, and Abimelech says no. So is it not exactly the same? It seems like Abraham is successful in his con.
Yes.
And Isaac's intention is cut short.
Right.
I assume from the text.
That's the way I'm reading it as
Yeah.
well. And I think that that's for the factors we've talked about.
So if we want to talk about formation,
Yeah.
we got to watch Abraham go from
Yes.
doing some pretty horrendous things,
Yes.
and as his life progresses, becoming more and more dependent on the Lord, and then
Correct.
coming to a place where he's walking with the Lord, obeying and participating in this plan. Well, if we look at it as far as a family line goes, we could say, like, hey, look how rough it was with Abraham. Isaac has, let's say, ill intentions or whatever, but his formation is sped up, as far as like, hey, we're not doing that again.
Yeah. I sure. Okay. Yes. I think that is what's happening in the text, and it's not because it's not just because you make a compelling argument. I think that's what the text is implying. It's showing that that's what's happened. Is that Abimelech has learned. He's wiser to the situation. Isaac, he can't play this game. God stops Isaac from going down to Egypt to try to play the game.
Yeah.
If that's what he was trying to do.
If that's what they're doing, which
right?
is my argument.
Which again, if it's mapping upon the same story, then it's likely that it would be the same story.
Right.
And the other thing that God could be guarding against is maybe Isaac goes down there and things happen like they were supposed to happen with Joseph, okay? And instead of it happening in God's time, the generations going into slavery down in Egypt, like God has already promised Abraham would happen. God's saying,
don't go there.
Don't go there yet, because that is an eventuality that would happen if you were allowed to do this. Do you know what I mean?
That's very interesting because he's in Gerar right now, and we just talked about what are Isaac's intentions once he gets into that land. Well, the very next verse, rather than deceiving the people there and gaining things through presenting his wife as his sister, rather than that, it gets cut off in verse 12, and Isaac sowed in the land.
Yeah.
And reaped in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him. So rather than scheming, he's invested in the land.
That's right. Which I think is really interesting because and then there's kind of a little bit of a controversy, not really, but kind of, between Abimelech and Isaac. Move away from us, verse 16, because you've become too powerful. So he moves away. He undoes the wells that were dug formerly by Abraham.
Well, can I pause you there real quick? Move away from us, you become too powerful or too numerous or whatever. Isn't that the same type of argument that happens in the subsequent generations after Joseph is in Egypt?
Yes.
The fear of the Pharaoh is like, hey, the Hebrew people are too many.
Yeah. But instead of asking them to move or applying their royal power to, not for expansion, but finding a peaceful resolution.
Right.
Which is what Abimelech does. Hey, can you just move on, bud? This is my land.
Yeah.
I'm letting you live here.
Yeah.
But head on now, okay? Whereas Pharaoh in Egypt enslaves them. That's a very different thing than moving them along.
Yeah.
Very, very different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there is kind of a parallel going on there. Because Isaac is doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's working the land.
Maybe that maps just so neatly onto what you said about don't go into Egypt yet because inevitably.
Yeah. You're going to be blessed.
This very same thing could have happened in another land, and I mean, we see it later. That's very interesting.
I think, in other words, I think those details are embedded there, and it is happening the way you're saying. I think that is what's going on in the story. It's that God is arranging this on purpose, so that the outcomes that need to happen when they need to happen will happen. Yeah. Okay. So we have the same thing going on again, where there's a controversy there. Okay, so they've got all this room that they're starting to expand into because Isaac has grown. It says 100-fold, which is kind of wild.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have another reiteration of the promise, because he says, well, I'll just start in verse 19. Isaac's servants dug well in the valley and discovered a well of fresh water there. But the herders of Gerar quarreled with those of Isaac and said, the water is ours. So he named the well Esek because they disputed with him. When they dug another well, then they dug another well, but they quarreled over that one also, so he named it Sitnah. He moved on from there and dug another well, and no one quarreled over it. He named it Rehoboth, saying, now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land. I want to pause there because this is similar to what happened with Abraham and Abimelech when they came to their final agreement, which we're going to see something paralleled later on there. But Isaac's doing the right thing just in a different way than Abraham did. Abraham made an agreement. Well, it's not doing something so different that they did with Lot, for instance. Right. You pick the side, that's fine. We'll move on over here. It seems like Isaac is doing that. And maybe, again, we're getting a condensed version of Abraham's formation. It's just all happening in this chapter with Isaac. Yeah. Because it's kind of the same stuff. Yeah. It's just happening quicker. Yeah. So maybe Isaac has learned.
I almost wonder if learned, maybe he was like, well, I'll just do what my dad did. Yeah. And as soon as Abimelech's like, not here, bud.
Not here. We're not doing that.
Maybe he goes, okay, wait. Maybe he proactively is like, I'm going to try to do right.
It makes you wonder. And so as he's doing right, then what happens is, from there he went up to Beersheba. That night the Lord appeared to him.
Another appearance of the Lord.
And said to him, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. Then Isaac does the thing that Abraham did. Isaac built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. There he pitched his tent, and there his servants dug a well. And then Abimelech shows back up. Anyway, it's like you're saying, we're getting a condensed version of Abraham's formation very quickly with Isaac. And this is kind of what I mentioned last week in the sermon. It's like, we only get a few chapters on Isaac. I mean, we've got...
Yeah, he kind of does a real quick,
Yeah, he's in and he's out.
Yeah.
Because it's only another page where... Not even a page in my Bible, because I'm still in chapter 26, we're getting into the birth of the children only
They've already been born.
one page,
haven't they?
one page later. No, they've already been born.
They were born in 25.
They were born in 25.
Yeah,
That's absolutely
chapter 25. So, I mean, all this is happening.
Yeah, across. Well, it says this: when Esau was 40 years old. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it looks like there's about a 40-year period here where we're seeing all this story compressed in. Mm-hmm. Which maybe is actually not as compressed as we're thinking. It's just that he doesn't go to Egypt and then come back and then to Beersheba and then come back and those kind of things.
I'm saying compressed as far as like how it's dictated down.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay,
that's what I'm saying too.
Good.
Yeah.
So not like all this happens quicker in a lifetime.
No.
But the narrative has progressed and it's picked up its momentum.
And it can because we've already got the establishment of the covenants, of circumcision, of the people of God's promise. Mm-hmm. All that needed to happen with Abraham has already happened. And so we've got that covenant now is carrying on into Isaac. And so we don't have to have a reasserting of circumcision. Right. We don't have to have a reasserting of,
the thing that
those
God
promises.
Does choose to reaffirm and reassert.
Yes.
Does it's so neatly in line with everything that he said so far. Which is interesting too, that like God keeps on saying what he will do, but doesn't make at least not here, because I guess, we get the law later or whatever, but as far as like, what chapter was it where God was basically saying like, I will do this, I will do this, I will do this, and you will do this, is what he says to Abraham, and kind of gives him a bit of like, this is going to be your part.
Yeah, you're going to walk with me faithfully.
The things that he is repeating to the subsequent generations are less, I don't want to say not at all, of like, you will do this, you will do this. He's repeating himself as far as like, I will do these things.
But he's doing it along, how does he say it in verse 24? I am with you, I will bless you and increase your number and your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. Like there's this call back to the stories that they're supposed to be being formed by. Yeah. So it's like God doesn't have to indicate or re-establish these things every generation. Right. It's because he's done that now, and now he's just making sure that these beginning, because again, God is coming in to meet them where they are in their way and in their day. He has to meet with them how they are so that he can begin to progress the story forward. But first we got to establish all this stuff. That's why we spend so much time with Abraham. Yeah. That's why we're spending less time, narratively speaking, with Isaac. Right. Yeah. Because it's the same stuff. He's just drawing on the same stuff, which the Bible's going to do the whole way, which is how we build themes, which is how we make inferences, because we're looking through the story for the repetition of those ideas. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it definitely has like a recapitulation kind of thing going on. And then Abimelech shows back up with Phicol, the same commander of his forces from the last time. I'm in verse 26, right after Isaac emulates his father. So
is Abimelech a pretty solid guy?
I would think so. And I would imagine he's probably a younger man by the time he's meeting Abraham. Yeah. Yeah. And again, if Abraham is 175, that makes Isaac 75 at this point. Oh, okay. So, if Abimelech is a younger man than Abraham, when they meet, it's definitely possible that it's the same guys. Yeah. Right? Okay. But yeah, he's showing up with a little show of force, right? Phicol, the commander, similar to what happened with Abraham. And we've already read this story, but it's going to resolve the same way. Isaac asked them, why have you come to me since you were hostile to me and sent me away? Which is kind of a joke, because that's not really what happened, right? It's that they became too numerous, too prosperous, and so the king has the right to press him on, okay? And who was hostile with him? It wasn't Abimelech. It was these herders that he was dealing with. That's a little unfair, but anyway, they answered, we saw clearly that the Lord is with you, so we said, there ought to be a sworn agreement between us and you. Let us make a treaty with you that you will do us no harm, just as we did you no harm, but always treated you well and sent you away peacefully. And now you are blessed by the Lord. That's interesting because that's the same thing that Abimelech noticed of Abraham. Yeah. It's the same exact thing. Yeah. Which comes on the heels, again, of building an altar, calling on the name of the Lord, modeling your life after, worship with God. Yeah. Okay, and then we go on into 30. Isaac then made a feast for them, and they ate and drank. This maps on to what we even said last week about communion
Yeah.
with people.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Isaac could get offended, mad, marshal the troops, whatever. He could do all that stuff. He doesn't. Instead, he offers a meal. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Early the next morning, the men swore an oath to each other. Then Isaac sent them on their way, and they went away peacefully. This is what it looks like to operate in exile the way we're called to, walking with God faithfully and being blameless.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just bless me; it blesses
Right.
others.
Right.
I think that's the point of what we're supposed to see in this 40-year story with Isaac. Well, maybe not 40 years fully here, but this account of his life moving forward after the birth of the children,
Yeah.
which we passed over the whole stew and
Which, how we doing on time and all that stuff. I know, like,
we're way over.
oh man. Okay, because here's the dilemma: is that I didn't want to skip over Isaac's life entirely.
Yeah.
And we are Sunday. You're talking Isaac and or Esau and Jacob.
Yes.
But really not in depth.
No. No.
And I think we ought to.
Yeah, I think we ought to as well.
And especially because the end of chapter 6 jumps right into Esau stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Now that he's a 40-year-old man.
Oh yeah.
I'm ready to talk about that stuff, but I don't know how we're doing on time.
Well, we're way over time, but let's spend another, I don't know, 15 minutes. See how far we can make it.
Okay.
See what the sermon says, and then we can come back and hit it next week.
So I guess in a run-up, because now the twin boys are re-entering the story at this point in chapter
Yes.
26. So we got notified that they were born.
Yeah.
And what that looks like as far as what is told to Rebekah
Yes.
by the Lord, as far as the one will be very strong and the older will serve the younger.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've talked about in the past that I think is a very interesting motif throughout the biblical
Yes.
stories, that you have this repetitive second in line inheritor taking the head inheriting place. So,
Right.
Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob and Esau, and then I think that kind of maps onto what, is it Paul or Peter who talks about later, as far as Jesus being the second Adam.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's Paul.
And so we know that before we even get into the adult life of these boys,
Yeah.
is that, all right, this second one, there's going to be something significant about this son. And then we even get kind of a foreshadowing of his character as he's born as
Yes.
the heel catcher.
The heel grabber.
So I think there's a lot of expectation already thick in the narrative before we even get into, well, what does the life of these guys look like?
Yeah.
And then before it even starts talking about their interaction with one another and the lines that come from them, it's kind of not a jolt as far as the way that chapter 26 that we just read up to verse 33 suddenly talks about Esau again, and it's not great. Verse 34, when Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beeri, and how would you say that?
The Hittite?
The Hittite to be his wife, and Basemeth, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah.
Yeah, my translation says they were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah.
So, I mean, layers in that.
Oh yeah.
I guess a question I have, I'll just give you all three of these and you can kind of pick at, is that they are Hittites. Is there tension with that group of people that I've already forgotten that's been established in the narrative? Question number 2, he takes 2 wives.
Yeah.
At the same time, we haven't had a reference of that since Lamech. No.
Yes.
Lamech.
Lamech.
Way back in Genesis 4.
That's
which
right.
There's 2 Lamechs in early Genesis.
Yes.
One's pretty good, one's real bad. It's good to know the difference between the two. So that already should be a big red flag
Yes,
for us.
it is.
That he's taken 2 wives.
Who are not like later on marriages or because even Abraham, with concubines and
Yeah. Yeah.
little suspect.
What I think is, important to note is that, if you wanted to play the game of, like, well, these early biblical figures, they did it, so it must be okay. Like, absolutely not. And if you look at the context of, like, everything, then it's always a source of grief and tension for generations down the line.
That is absolutely the case. So, okay, so answer one of your questions. No, we have not yet been told, like, the Hittites are enemies. We're going to see that later on.
Okay.
Now, but that doesn't mean that we haven't already seen the desire for Abraham to keep it in the family. It's not the right way to phrase it, but like getting a wife for Isaac is not for Isaac. Abraham commanded that the servant not go to one of the other nations that they're supposed to be distinct from.
Interesting.
In Canaan. He's supposed to go back to Nahor's sons and daughters to find a suitable wife. So we're already kind
at the very
of
least,
getting that.
Esau is outside of the parameter that Abraham
has set up.
Would have set up.
Not that that's 100% the case.
Set up by God or anything like that. But I also wonder if that it's mentioned that they're Hittites. For the reader, then, is this similar to what we were talking about earlier with the Midianites?
Yeah.
As far as like, oh, okay, we know where this is headed just because they're farther down the line.
So this is Abraham talking to the servant about Isaac. And yes, I agree with what you're saying. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac. What's the purpose of that? This family has to be unique, which also means they have to be distinct. So I think Abraham has a point in this, which is that we're not just going to take, wives from anywhere and from anyone. We because again, this idea of the unique and one and only son, the unique son, this particular line through whom God is working to bring about the Messiah, can't just have. It's being protected here in the early days, right? God is trying to ensure that this line is not like the thing we saw in Genesis chapter 6, right? With the spiritual rebels, taking for themselves wives that they want. We're trying to ensure that it doesn't look that way. So it is fascinating that Esau's character is kind of being called out here in this final verse of verse 26. That Esau's doing a thing that was expressly forbidden for his father to have done.
Oh.
So I think we're getting an indication that Esau is like the Lamech, who is a mighty warrior, who might slay someone if they just offend him,
and seems pretty ready to make a decision. Seems a little brash.
Kind of a brash guy.
So there's more layers there than I first picked up on. That's good.
Yeah, I think the text is indicating those things. Exactly what you were pointing out is those things that's indicating, and we're already primed to see that because of what God said about these guys. Right, 2 nations are in your womb. This is chapter 25, and 2 people from within you will be separated. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. And Esau's name, they name him because his body is hairy like a garment, and we find out later that he's kind of an outdoorsman.
So I guess with the verse that we just read, that kind of gives a lot more layers that parallel him with someone of a character like Lamech.
Yeah.
I guess that colors in the story quite a bit more for me, rather than like, well, what's wrong with like being outside and strong and hairy?
Nothing.
And it's just like, okay, wait, there's favor for one, but not for the other. Before we've even gotten there, the reader then would be making links to the character or ambition, or is that what you're saying? As far as like, well, he went to these places that his father was forbidden to, or whatever.
Correct. Yes.
Tells us something about him outside of. He likes being outside,
and says something regardless of the blessings that are to come. It's not as though this is a response, although he also does this in response to his blessing being given away to Isaac. He then goes and does the opposite thing of what his father and mother want him to do, just like he's done before. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, no, being outside don't matter. Jacob's kind of more of a purse string kind of man. He wants to be inside and be around the tents and this kind. So he's not really out there. All I'm pointing out is that Esau's a wilder guy.
Right.
He's just a wilder. Not that being outside makes you wild necessarily.
But in character.
And I think that those details are being put in there on purpose for us. Maybe kind of like a caricature.
Okay.
We're supposed to see some of these details.
Is it supposed to kind of speed up and be like, hey, this is the kind of guy we're dealing with?
Right.
Okay.
Outdoorsman, that kind of thing. Where I do think that. But again, it's not just based upon that, because then what happens is, because Jacob becomes a shepherd. He's outdoors too.
Right.
It's not like he's only indoors.
Back in the day, everybody's got to be outside.
Exactly.
What does it mean to be an outdoorsman?
Right. So, but yeah, what we find out about Esau's character, more so than the detail about him being hairy, although that's interesting, because now we know there's a distinction between the two babies. It's not identical twins.
Right.
We do know that one is different than the other.
Yeah, and that it's not an accidental scenario, that it is, again, a scheme.
Yes, and so when Esau's born, right, we have Jacob, because there's twins. Jacob's seen grabbing his heel, okay? Esau's named for his appearance. Jacob is named for his character, which how do you describe as a baby?
Yeah.
It's so interesting. And I think it's interesting that Isaac names the boys this, okay?
Yeah.
So after this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. Okay, then we find out they grow up. Jacob, heel grabber, also means overreacher, usurper, deceiver. It's something like that.
Yeah.
Along in the line. Okay, then we have, the next story we have is of them just kind of being themselves. Esau's out doing the thing. Okay, Jacob's kind of doing his thing, being back in camp. Esau comes back, and now you're talking about, okay, why are we calling him brash? Is it just because he's been outside?
Yeah.
No, it's because of stuff like this.
Right.
He shows up, and he's so hungry that he wants some stew. I'm going to die right now,
Which, how are we supposed to read that? Is he talking like, I'm dying, dude, like, give me some of your stew? Or is he on death's door, and Jacob is, using this moment? I guess you could do it either way.
I guess you could do it either way.
Still, it would still kind of show character for either side.
And I think,
I don't know that it changes it a ton.
no.
There would be one that was too flippant with their birthright, which is the one that I'm more familiar with, or the way that it's been portrayed to me, which I don't know that we have a fair reason to assume that one.
Sure.
Any more than we could assume that, like, well, what if he truly was in, like, need of food and water, and Jacob saw it as an opportunity to manipulate? The outcome is the same.
Yeah.
I'm saying, why should we land in one or the other?
Yeah, I think it's gray enough for us to not have to say we want to be in this camp or that camp. I think what we're seeing, though, is that the value of the birthright versus the value of the bowl of stew, even if he's dying, he's still among the tents.
Right.
Why couldn't he go ask someone else?
Yeah.
Is it that Esau's coming and picking on his little brother?
Yeah.
And his little brother's taking an opportunity? All I'm saying is we don't know.
Right.
We don't know. What we do know is that the value differential is not
what it ought to be.
That's the point. This bowl of soup is really nothing in comparison to what Jacob is receiving from Esau.
Right.
And does Esau think, well, it doesn't matter, I'll just beat this dude up at some point and I'll get it back from him? Or what? We don't know. We don't know. But it seems to be binding because, well, the text does tell us. Verse 34. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate it and drank and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright after he sold it to Jacob.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's like that idea of him being brash and making decisions just out of his emotions seems to be the kind of characteristics we have being set up here. He's not being calm and collective and thoughtful, whereas Jacob's Jacob's the other end of too calm and collected and thoughtful. He's on
Right.
the scheming side of
Right.
that. And Esau's the opposite end. I think that's what we're supposed to be seeing. So Esau then despises his birthright. It's like maybe he finally realizes after eating, his eyes were opened after eating something. Maybe you could say. And now he realizes, and now he realizes, I just did something bad.
I think he has to.
I just made a mistake.
Because 34 of 27, as soon as Esau, this is after Isaac has blessed Jacob.
Oh, right.
As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry.
Yeah.
I think tells us that he wasn't just kind of like, meh.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some recognition.
Yeah.
After he's made this, we could say a brash decision. That, which then leads him instead of trying to seek some kind of way to do this right, to figure this out correctly, he just despises instead.
Which is interesting because, I know we've kind of jumped forward a little bit, but the type of blessing that Isaac gives Jacob, it's not even, and that Esau finds it something to like cry out bitterly over.
Yeah.
It's not like he's receiving a physical inheritance or anything like that.
Words.
Yeah, and it's like
It's words.
and it's enough for Esau to be just as torn up about it as you can be. But like, if you read the promise, it's all, he's not putting anything in his hand, but clearly the family's blessing up to this point has meant something and has been reiterated again and again and again. So for Isaac to say, I'm just going to read it. This is the blessing that begins in 27. So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and said to him, see and smell of my son is the smell of the field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Like, Esau is not upset over monetary
10
gain.
cows.
Yeah. He is aware that there is a trajectory for this chosen family.
That's right.
And he's given it away.
Yeah, and then he's given away the birthright that gives him claim to this. Now what's fascinating is that Jacob has to do this at all. That Rebekah and Jacob do this at all.
Yeah.
That's what's fascinating.
That is
because Jacob owns the birthright. Okay. Whether Isaac wants to legitimate that or not, okay, fair enough. But the fact that deception is even on the table, when the promise was given, you just turn back one page before the sons were even born. So is Isaac, because he favors Esau, not going to bless Jacob the way that he was intended to?
Okay, that is very interesting because it does say that Isaac seems to be a bit more of a fan of Esau's style or whatever. Yeah. So, and the promise was given to Rebekah. Am I right?
I think it's to both of them.
Okay.
I think it's to both of them.
But the Lord speaks to her.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Because Isaac prays, but he speaks to Rebekah.
Okay. So that is a very interesting point. Is this an instance where we can measure what are the intentions of Isaac? Yeah,
based upon the way the story's mapped. I think so.
That's very interesting.
Because deception shouldn't be necessary if Isaac were going to opt for the path that God had laid out.
Which he's very aware of.
And how about this? Is he aware of it? We don't know. I would assume so.
Okay.
Rebekah surely has told, right? Has surely told Isaac what God had told her. And if she hasn't, then that's also a ping on her character. Either way,
that she kind of has something in reserve that she will then again either way
we don't know. Either way, it's not good. There's more dysfunction in this family than is necessary. If they would just talk with one another and find some reconciliation, then we could figure this thing out. But that's not what happens. The scheming, the deceptions occur. And what's so fascinating is it's not a monetary thing. It's words. It's words.
Yeah.
Why do they matter this much? Well, clearly they matter to the sons, okay? And clearly the sons believe, as does Isaac and Rebekah, that these words spoken over their sons will have some import or impact.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, does Isaac view himself as maybe not a prophet in the way that Abraham was called, but like in the line of, because I'm the unique chosen son. And so like what I say, because I have this relationship with God is what it is. I don't know. I don't know how they view that. You know what I mean? I don't think it's magic. It's not an incantation.
Right. But I guess that we've talked about things like this before, is like, does your posture matter? Does it not?
Right.
As far as, like if we just real quick, prayer wise, like, can I walk down the street with my eyes open and pray? Like,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Does it mean something to kneel?
Yes.
To fold your hands and close your eyes. And
Yeah,
and so that's kind of what I want to equate it to, is like, well, whatever the intentions were for Isaac as far as what son he was going to bless, as far as, well, we almost have like a conundrum at this point, where it's like, hey, there is a promised family line. Well, now we're dealing with twins.
Yes.
Well, what do we do now? Well, oldest son by however long or whatever, but
and that's the cultural value.
Yeah. But on top of that, then there's the older will serve the younger.
Yeah.
Well, now we have an extra bit of attention put in. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it does matter the posture Isaac assumes, even though he would be fully aware that like God has been faithful to carry out his plan.
Yeah.
My part in it looks like doing something.
Ought to be this.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a part of the question that we're intended to ask from this narrative. Is that Isaac's posture? That I am going to fulfill God's plan cooperatively. I'm going to bless the younger son is going to be the one that I call out. Or because he favors Esau so much, he doesn't want to hurt Esau's feelings, and so he's going to opt to bless Esau. I don't know. I think that's the beauty of these stories. Is the longer you sit with them, the more that these questions are going to pop out.
It feels like the tension's rising and rising.
There's so much dysfunction. Well, and that's what's happening. As a result of this dysfunction and what happens, Esau does cry out bitterly.
Right.
And I don't think that's just oh man.
Right.
No, like he's blessed me too, Father.
Right.
Like he's begging.
Yeah.
He's begging. And then the text later on says, Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob.
Yeah.
So this isn't a light thing.
Yeah.
This is significant. Okay? Because Esau, I think, anticipates or expects, I'm the firstborn, I'm going to be in charge.
Right.
And that's just not the way that God designed it to be in this instance. And instead of Esau being on board, being a part of, he's flippant with what he could bless Jacob with. He is flippant he's brash about the way he relates with the family and with their way of walking with God. Do you know what I mean? Because he goes and gets the Hittite wives.
Yeah.
He two of them. He trades his birthright as if it's meaningless. He despises Jacob and his birthright as a result. I mean, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, Esau's being dealt a raw hand, but Esau's also not cooperating.
Right.
And it seems like none of them are. I think that's kind of the point. It's like, it's not just Esau that's compromised, and so he gets a bad rap. Jacob is compromised. Rebekah's compromised. She's in on the scheme against her husband with her son.
Right.
Like this is not good.
This is deep. Yeah.
Isaac might be compromised because he's intending to bless the oldest son, even though God has told him it's going to be the second one.
Yeah.
And it's not as though you can't bless both of them.
Right.
It's just that this
Which
is
God
the
has
chosen
done before
one.
with more than one brother anyways.
And Isaac is one of the two brothers in that relationship.
Okay, wait. Yeah, you're right. But now I'm wanting to jump even further back with Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
If you do what is right, will you not also be
Will you
blessed?
not be blessed?
Yeah. And so if we kind of map that on top, what is it that Jacob does, that Jacob does deceitfully?
Yeah.
Kind of puts on a garb so he can be perceived as his brother, but also brings a meal to his
Yes.
dad.
Yeah.
So
Oh, it's mapping right onto the Cain and Abel and Adam and Eve story.
Yeah, and then
mapping
what
right on.
happens right after? Like a blessing is
Yes.
given to one. Wouldn't you also be blessed? And his intention is to go out and kill his brother.
Yeah.
It's just so.
Oh, it's all
It's
wrapped
tiny.
in there. There's so, food as
Yeah.
temptation or source of blessing or
Right.
source of perceived blessing.
Right.
Okay, food as an object of temptation, definitely on the table. Brothers fighting with one another, parents being dysfunctional and in their sin. Oh, this is not one of those kinds of stories where you're just supposed to go, oh, okay, sold his birthright. Oh, okay, took 2 wives. Oh, no, you're supposed
Yeah.
to pause
Yeah.
and sit on those things and go, wait a minute. This isn't how it's supposed to be happening. These people are not walking with God in the way that I think God would intend for them. And I think what's so fascinating about the way the Bible portrays them is that it's not a false piety kind of thing. Like it's not portraying these people in a false way. It's just telling you like it is.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not about them.
Right.
I mean, it is because it is, right? Because they're part of the story.
Yeah.
But it's about what will God do in the midst of this? How can he take this jacked up family, this dysfunctional family, and turn them around to produce the kind of blessing that he's promising to them? I'm going to bless you so that you become a blessing for all these nations. How is he going to do that?
I do think it's just so weird, though, that like we talked about before with Isaac. Well, the narrative's kind of sped up, and we do kind of see this like maybe quicker narrative character change for Isaac. You're like, can we expect the same thing of Jacob? Like, no.
Long story. Very long story.
Yeah.
Because again, I think the formation that's necessary in each of these individuals is individualized.
Yeah.
In other words, it's not the way that Abraham was spoken to is the way that Abraham needed it. The way that Isaac needed it is the way that Isaac needed it. The way that Jacob's going to need it is going to be very different than the way that his father and grandfather needed it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's similar, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same promises and all those things, but it's in appearances and all those things, but it's also vastly different than what they experienced. Vastly different. It's particular to Jacob.
Yeah. Time?
Way over.
Okay. Another time then.
Well, I mean, honestly, and we could even look back in the narrative if we wanted to, moving forward. But I mean, this is where I'm showing up essentially in the sermon is where I'm getting to Genesis 28 verse 10. So I mean, we've almost made it there. The only thing that we're missing is that Isaac is telling Jacob after he blesses him, don't go and marry Hittite women. Don't go and marry Canaanite women.
Not just Isaac's instructions, but the very end of 27, the way Rebekah puts it is, Then Rebekah said to Isaac, verse 46, I loathe my life because of these Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be?
Okay, Rebekah.
Yeah, she'd be real dramatic.
That's a lot of drama. That's a lot of drama. But again, we're replaying the sins of Sarah.
Yeah.
We're replaying the sins of Abraham.
Yeah.
When I go outside of God's pathway and path for me, when I in Esau's case intentionally try to sin, it's not just bad for him. It's bad for everybody. Yeah. And unfortunately, these Hittite women probably get the short end of the stick of this situation. And that seems to be the case all the way through the Old Testament. Yeah. Is that when men and women do the wrong thing, it's generally the children and the children and the women who get most abused.
Yeah. That's super tragic.
Yeah, it's awful.
I do think it's also interesting. Last time we spoke together, we were talking mountains and all that stuff. We were talking about Ezekiel. Well, that also traces right back to this conflict between brothers and the descendants of Esau and these two wives. So it's not just that there's like, look at this dysfunctional family and all this tension and it's causing problems for the parents and the brother and all that stuff. There are generations upon generations that are dealing with
the fallout.
Yeah.
The fallout.
Yeah.
And not, I think the picture that we're going to see later on, though, is that God can interrupt that fallout at any moment.
Yeah.
And or I mean them both kind of together. I can choose to see the world God's way, and I can choose to walk God's way. I can be a faithful covenant partner with him, even if I'm not chosen. I can be a faithful covenant partner with him, and I can produce the kind of blessings that Abraham produced, and Isaac, when he got it right, we were producing, which is peace with one another, if I'll choose to do it God's way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it kind of looks like, well, every time we see, I don't know every time, but when we see someone like Esau make a very deliberate intention to sin and take multiple wives and all this stuff, and then we can say like, oh man, look at the fallout from that.
Yeah.
And these like nations and people who are in tension with one another all across that for not choosing God's way. But when people do choose God's way, then it becomes the promise to what? Be reconciliation for the nations.
That's right.
So even when we see all like, oh man, he's choosing wrong again, and there's nations that then shoot off, and we have wars and tension forever. When they stick to the original promise, those nations are also reconciled.
And there it is.
Yeah.
And so who's going to facilitate that?
Yeah.
What you just said. Who's going to facilitate these nations coming back together? How is this going to happen? Well, that's the series that we're that we're in, and I think I love the discussion that we've been having, because again, all the things that we're discussing here in Genesis, they're the same things we're going to discuss in Exodus and Numbers and Deuteronomy and throughout the story. So these are not inconsequential stories for us. They do impact our theme of exile because, again, they're creating the surrounding the setting by which maybe some significant moments will occur that kind of chart along the main path or have a more particular influence on the main path. Maybe there's some way to say that doesn't diminish these other stories, because I don't mean to do that either. But anyway, we'll figure out that language as we go here. Sure. I did want to point out in verse 28, verse 20, chapter 28, this whole thing is about the thing that Esau's done. So Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him. Okay, we got that. Then he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Paddan Aram, to the house of your mother's father, Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. I wonder if he'll be important. Yeah. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessings given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, exile language, the land God gave to Abraham. Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way. He went to Paddan Aram, to Laban, son of Bethuel the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, who was the mother of Jacob and Esau. Now, Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob and had sent him to Paddan Aram and taken a wife from there, and that when he blessed him, he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and had gone to Paddan Aram. Esau then realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac. So he, went to Ishmael and married however you say her name, Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth, and the daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, in addition to the wives he already had. So I get it. Esau gets a raw deal. Right. But Esau also, he's choosing it too. Yeah. He has a choice to resist or to persevere through the raw deal. And yet he's not. He's choosing to see his own way and to do his own thing. Right. So now the drama is set. The stage is set for what's happening next. We've already got some exilic language in here. We've got Esau and Jacob. What's going to happen? Esau wants to kill this guy. Jacob's running away. Jacob's just burnt all his relationships. And he's heading off to Laban out there in kind of a foreign land, a foreign land to him at least, to get himself a wife. What will happen next? Yeah. How does God fit into the midst of this? Right. I think that's the question we need to be asking. Yeah,
muddied the deal about as much as you can.
Yes. Now, I do think it's interesting that Isaac does give kind of a similar blessing to what God has given him to send Jacob off with. I think there's still, how about this? These people can be dysfunctional and compromised and yet still love God.
Yeah.
In their best way, in their...
Isn't that good news?
And
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to point out. And I think that as we read the story, we're going to see even more of that good news. Because, man,
It gets rough.
The story is not sweet and tidy.
Yeah.
After this.
Yeah.
Any other questions or things that we should hit? I mean, we're way over time, but it's okay.
No. I loved that. I guess it's not there's no good stopping point especially for Jacob.
Just gotta read the whole thing,
you know. So yeah, I'm happy to land it there and see where we can pick up in a week or two.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. As always, thanks for watching. Send some comments. Shoot any questions our way, and we hope this blessed you guys.